sad truth about Big Boss Man's death is something WWE never really talked about, and it's a story that will shock you to the core. How could he suddenly die at just 41 years old? For years, it felt like a mystery, but when his wife finally opened up, her revelations changed everything. Suddenly, the pieces started to fit together, and people began to see the role WWE may have played in what happened. So, let's dive into this story and uncover what really went on behind the scenes. The truth is, even though Big Boss Man was a spectacular performer in the ring, loved by so many fans, his real life away from the spotlight was nothing like the larger-than-life character people saw on TV. Inside the arena, he was this tough, intimidating figure who made people cheer, boo, and stay glued to their screens. But once the cameras turned off and the lights dimmed, he was just a man whose body had been battered by years of wrestling. Like many of his peers from that era, the physical grind of the business caught up with him. The constant travel, the brutal matches, and the injuries that never fully healed left him struggling more than most people realized. On September 22, 2004, everything came crashing down. At only 41 years old, he died suddenly from a heart attack at his home in Georgia. The news hit like a thunderbolt across the wrestling world. Fans who had grown up watching him couldn't believe it. How could someone who still seemed so strong, so full of life, be gone just like that? His passing wasn't just shocking because of his young age. It was heartbreaking because he was still remembered with so much love by the very people who had cheered him on during his career. But what made his story even more complex was what came later. In the years after his death, his wife Angela began to open up in interviews, sharing details that fans had never known. She revealed the other side of his life, the side filled with constant physical pain that he carried around silently. She spoke about how dedicated he was to his family, how he tried to shield them from his struggles, and how much he fought to keep going even when his health was failing him. Angela painted a picture of a man who pushed himself far beyond his limits, often hiding just how much he was suffering because he didn't want to let down his family or his fans. Her words gave people a new understanding of what he had been going through behind the curtain. Suddenly, his death didn't feel like just a random tragedy. It became clearer how much the relentless demands of wrestling, the punishing lifestyle, the injuries, the stress, had played a part in taking him away too soon. For many fans, hearing Angela's side of the story was like finally putting together the missing pieces of a puzzle. It showed just how much Big Boss Man had sacrificed, not only for his career, but for the entertainment of millions, and how that sacrifice may have ultimately cost him his life. Now, let's take a closer look at his career. The incredible performances that made him a star in wrestling history, but also the same battles in the ring that took such a heavy toll on his body and played a big part in his untimely death. Before he was ever known as the Big Boss Man, RAYTRAYOR lived a very different life. Long before the bright lights of the wrestling world, he worked as a corrections officer in Cobb County, Georgia. That real-life job would one day inspire one of wrestling's most famous characters, but back then, he was just another young man with a tough, demanding career. Still, something about Traylor stood out. He was a big guy with presence, and eventually, he decided to step into the world of professional wrestling. Traylor made his debut in 1984, starting out just like many others at the bottom of the card. He worked as what's known in the business as a jobber for Jim Crockett Promotions, which basically meant his role was to make others look good. But it didn't take long for someone important to notice his potential. Dusty Rhodes, who was the head booker at the time, saw something special in him. Dusty pulled him off television for a few months, then brought him back in a new role, Big Bubba Rogers. As Big Bubba, Traylor wasn't just another wrestler. He was repackaged as the silent, intimidating bodyguard for Jim Cornette, who at that time was managing the Midnight Express. Bubba's size, combined with his ability to play the strong, silent type, made him stand out quickly. Soon, he was thrown into a major feud with none other than Dusty Rhodes himself. Their rivalry played out in a series of brutal bunkhouse stampede matches in 1986, where both men ended up tied for wins. That meant a big tiebreaker inside a steel cage, and on February 27th, Dusty picked up the victory. Traylor's career kept moving upward. In 1987, after Jim Crockett purchased the Universal Wrestling Federation, Traylor jumped over to that promotion. He made a splash almost immediately. On April 19th, he defeated the massive one-man gang to win the UWF Heavyweight Championship. For someone who had only been in the business for a few years, this was a huge achievement. After the win, he aligned himself with General Skandor Akbar and his infamous stable, Devastation Incorporated. His reign didn't last long, though. On July 11th, he dropped the title to Dr. Death Steve Williams during the Great American Bash Tour. By 1988, Traylor was expanding his career even further, touring Japan for All Japan Pro Wrestling under his Big Bubba name, but it was later that same year that his career completely changed. In May 1988, he signed with the World Wrestling Federation, and this is where the world was introduced to the character that would define his career, the Big Boss Man. The gimmick was directly inspired by his past life as a corrections officer. Dressed in his blue police shirt, sunglasses, and carrying a nightstick, he quickly became one of the most hated villains in the company. Managed by Slick, the Boss Man had a post-match routine that made fans absolutely despise him. He'd handcuff his defeated opponents to the ropes and beat them with his nightstick or even a ball and chain. It was cruel, and in wrestling, that meant he was doing his job perfectly. Big Boss Man got his first big win at SummerSlam 1988, defeating Koko B. Ware. Soon after, he was thrust into a major feud with the biggest star in wrestling, Hulk Hogan. In October of that year, Boss Man attacked Hogan on the Brother Love Show, setting up one of the WWF's biggest rivalries. But Boss Man wasn't just feuding solo. He also teamed up with another massive heel, Akeem. Together, they were called the Twin Towers. The two quickly became central figures in the storyline that broke up the Mega Powers, Hogan and Randy Savage. Their matches with Hogan and Savage at the main event in early 1989 were dramatic and chaotic, even leading to the infamous backstage fight between the Mega Powers after Savage thought Hogan cared more about Miss Elizabeth than the match itself. At WrestleMania 5, the Twin Towers defeated the Rockers, Shawn Michaels, and Marty Jannetty. Around the same time, Boss Man's feud with Hogan peaked in a series of cage matches. One of their most memorable bouts came on Saturday night's main event in May 1989, where Hogan superplexed the 300-pound Boss Man off the top of the steel cage. It was a jaw-dropping moment for that era. Boss Man kept busy after that. He feuded with Demolition, Dusty Rhodes, and others, but in 1990, he shocked fans by turning face. The storyline began when Ted DiBiase tried to pay him to steal back the $1 Million Championship from Jake the Snake Roberts. Boss Man did take the belt and bag, but when he realized Damien the Python was inside, he refused DiBiase's money and returned everything to Roberts. That act of honor turned him into a fan favorite. As a good guy, Boss Man's career stayed strong. He feuded with Bobby Heenan, Mr. Perfect, and the Mountie, even beating the Mountie in the legendary jailhouse match at SummerSlam 1991, which forced the Mountie to spend a night in jail. Later, he clashed with Nails in one of the WWF's most personal storylines. By early 1993, Boss Man's time in WWF was winding down. His last major feud came against Bam Bam Bigelow, which ended at Royal Rumble 1993. After leaving WWF, he wrestled in various places, including USWA, SMW, and Japan, before signing with WCW. In WCW, he went through several name changes, The Boss, The Guardian Angel, and eventually returning to Big Bubba Rogers. He feuded with top stars like Vader, Sting, and even Hulk Hogan again. For a time, he joined the Dungeon of Doom, then, later, the NWO, though his stay there was brief. By 1998, he left WCW behind. That same year, he returned to WWF in a completely new look. This time, he wore a black SWAT-style outfit and became Vince McMahon's enforcer in the corporation. He won the Hardcore Championship multiple times, teamed with Ken Shamrock to win the tag team titles, and even had one of the most infamous moments in WrestleMania history, being hanged inside Hell in a cell by The Undertaker at WrestleMania 15. Boss Man stayed busy through the late 1990s, feuding with Al Snow in the bizarre Pepper the Dog storyline, and later with Big Show, which included the infamous segment where he dragged Big Show's father's casket away with a car. It was dark, controversial, and unforgettable. By 2000, his role began to wind down. He teamed with Bull Buchanan for a while, then wrestled on smaller shows, and later helped train younger talent in Ohio Valley Wrestling. His final WWE match came in 2002, and by 2003, he quietly left the company when his contract expired. And that's all for today's video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll catch you in the next one. Take care. Take care.